Elias sat by the dim fire outside his small wooden shelter, watching the sky turn dark. The frontier world was harsh, its winds dry and sharp, its soil stubborn and weak. His farm plots gave little, and the supplies he had brought from the last human ship were almost gone. He often wondered how long he could keep living like this. He had left Earth with hope, chasing a dream of freedom and land of his own. But years later, he was a man with cracked hands, a thin body, and a heart full of doubts. Sometimes he whispered to himself, maybe humans were never meant for this place. That night, while the fire flickered low, he heard something. Heavy steps echoed through the dry field. The sound was not like the soft tread of humans, nor like the scuttling of the native beasts. It was slow, powerful, like boulders shifting under their own weight. Elias froze. From the shadows a figure emerged. She was tall, almost twice his height, with broad shoulders and dark armor-like skin that caught the firelight. Her face was strong, her eyes bright and deep, carrying a strange sadness within them. Elias's breath caught in his throat. He had heard rumors about the alien settlers, the Karaku, but he had never met one face to face. The woman stood still, then spoke. Her voice was calm yet carried the weight of thunder. "You are human," she said, not as a question but as a fact. Elias gripped the handle of his old tool, unsure if he should run or fight. "And you?" "You're Karaku," he said. She nodded slowly. "I am Saraka, widow of House Drell." Her words puzzled him. He had little knowledge of their customs, but the word widow was clear enough. Still, he did not understand why she had come to him. "What do you want?" Elias asked, his voice cautious. Saraka stepped closer, her towering form casting a shadow over him and his fire. She studied him as though measuring his spirit, not just his body. Finally, she spoke words that nearly made him drop his tool. "I need a husband, and you need strong offspring." Elias blinked, sure he had misheard. "What?" She repeated it slower this time, as if explaining something simple. "I need a partner. My people are few. My mate fell in war, and I cannot let my line end. You are human, small but clever, and you fight to live even when all odds press against you. You need protection, strength, and a future. I can give you these things." Elias felt his chest tighten. He had expected danger, maybe even death, but not this. You want me to be your husband?" he asked. "Yes," she said plainly. "It is not only want, it is need. For both of us." Elias sat down slowly, trying to think. His life was hard, too hard. Alone, he had little chance of surviving another season of storms or raids from desperate settlers, and yet what she offered sounded unbelievable. Protection, strength, security, things he had longed for. But there was fear too. She was powerful, alien, and her customs were not his. Could he truly accept this? He studied her. She did not look desperate or cruel. Instead, there was dignity in her posture, and a strange sorrow in her eyes when she mentioned her fallen mate. She was not here to trick him. She was here because in her way she was as lost as he was. Elias cleared his throat. "Why me? There are stronger men, braver men." Saraka shook her head. "Strength is not only in the arms. I have seen you work the land. I have seen you mend broken tools with little more than wire and will. You did not abandon this place, though it breaks you. That is strength. It is what I need." Her words pierced through him. No one had ever spoken of his struggle like that. To most, he was just a poor farmer on the edge of failure. To her, his survival meant something more. He thought of the long nights, the hunger, the loneliness. He thought of the raiders who had nearly taken everything from him last year. He thought of how many more winters he could survive alone. The answer was not many. Slowly, he put down the tool in his hand. "If I agree, what does that mean?" Saraka lowered herself so she was closer to his height. "It means we live together. I protect you, you stand beside me. We share food, land, and future. I honor you as my husband. In time, there will be children who carry both our blood. They will be strong, stronger than either alone." The fire crackled between them, and Elias felt the weight of her words. A part of him still feared what this bond might mean, but another part deep inside felt a spark of hope for the first time in years. After a long silence, Elias whispered, This is not what I expected from life." Saraka tilted her head. "Nor I, but life does not ask what we expect. It gives what we must face." Elias gave a short, nervous laugh. "You speak like an old philosopher." She allowed a small smile. "Perhaps, or perhaps it is only the truth of one who has lost much. The night grew colder and the stars stretched above them. Elias stared at the fire, his mind torn between fear and possibility. This was not a simple decision, yet the choice seemed clear. Alone he was fading. With her, perhaps there was a chance for something greater. Finally, he looked up at her and said, "I will think about it." Serica rose to her full height, her shadow stretching long and tall. "Do so, but know this, I will not force you. If you choose yes, I will honor it. If you choose no, I will leave you in peace. Yet I believe your answer is already in your heart." With that, she turned and walked into the dark fields, leaving Elias staring at the glowing fire. He sat in silence long after she had gone. The wind whispered through the dry grass, and the stars above seemed sharper, brighter than before. For the first time in years, Elias felt that the universe had noticed him, and perhaps, just perhaps, his lonely struggle was about to change. The next morning, Elias woke with heavy thoughts. The strange proposal from the giant widow, Serica, had filled his mind through the night. He had expected to wake and laugh at the memory, calling it a dream. But the footprints outside his farm told him otherwise. They were deep, wide, and unlike any humans. She had been real, and her words had been true. All day he worked with restless hands, planting, mending, carrying water. His thoughts kept circling back to her promise. "I protect you, you stand beside me. We share food, land, and future." It sounded like an impossible dream, yet his heart whispered that it was hope. That evening, as the sky grew orange with sunset, the ground shook again with heavy steps. Elias dropped his tool and turned. Serica walked into his field, tall and calm, her long cloak trailing behind her. She looked like a mountain moving across the land. "You are here again," Elias said. His voice carried a mix of fear and curiosity. "I said I would return," she answered. Her deep eyes studied him. "Have you decided?" Elias took a slow breath. "I will try, but I am only a man. I do not know your customs, your ways. I do not even know if I can truly stand beside you." Serica's expression softened, though her features were sharp and strong. "You have already stood against the land and against hunger. That is enough for me." From that day, their uneasy alliance began. At first, life together was awkward. Serica was far larger than Elias, and her movements often startled him. She ate more food in one meal than he did in 2 days. Her voice carried across the valley when she spoke, and even when she tried to whisper, it felt like thunder rolling. But she kept her promise. When Elias's crops were threatened by wild beasts that roamed the frontier nights, Serica drove them away with nothing more than her strength and a loud roar. When raiders appeared on the horizon, hoping to steal from a weak farmer, they turned back the moment they saw the tall figure of Serica, waiting with a spear in hand. Elias, in turn, offered what he could. He showed her how to repair his broken tools with bits of wire and nails. He shared his small tricks for finding water beneath the hard soil. When storms came, it was Elias who guided her into the shelter he had built, explaining how his people survived such weather. Slowly, they began to learn from each other. One night, as they sat by the fire, Serica spoke of her people. "The Karaku were once many. We lived across the stars, proud and strong. But wars burned our houses and enemies hunted us. I lost my husband in those wars. Now I am alone except for the memory of my house." Elias listened quietly. He could see the grief hidden beneath her calm tone. "On Earth, too, many people lost families to wars," he said softly. "We came here for a chance at peace, but sometimes peace is harder to find than war." Serica looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Yes, yet peace built with 2 hands is stronger than peace given by others." For the first time, Elias felt as if her heart was not so different from his own. They were both survivors, carrying heavy burdens of loss. Weeks passed, and their bond grew stronger. Elias began to notice small things. Serica always left the larger share of food for him, even though her body needed more. She carried heavy stones to help him build walls around his farm, though she never asked for thanks. And though her size was intimidating, her presence gave him a strange comfort. With her near, the nights no longer felt so lonely. Elias, too, began to show his value in ways Serica did not expect. When a group of small but clever beasts began stealing their stored grain, Serica suggested crushing them with force. Elias shook his head and instead built traps from rope and wood. The beasts were caught without a fight, and Soraka's eyes widened in surprise. "You win battles without blood," she said. Elias smiled faintly. "Sometimes strength is not in the arm but in the mind." She nodded, repeating his words as if to remember them. But their alliance was not without challenge. One evening, Soraka tried to move the farm fence. Her great strength made the wood snap like dry twigs, and Elias shouted in frustration. "You cannot just break things and call it helping," he said angrily. Soraka frowned, unused to being scolded by one so small. "I meant no harm. My way is not your way." Elias rubbed his face, sighing. "We have to learn each other's ways, or we will break more than fences." She was silent for a long moment, then finally said, "You are right. Forgive me." It was the first time she had spoken those words to him, and it showed Elias that she truly wanted this bond to work. As the days turned into months, trust grew. Soraka began to ask Elias's opinion before making changes around the farm. Elias, in turn, grew less afraid of her towering presence. He even found moments to laugh with her, sharing small jokes that she sometimes struggled to understand, but always tried to return with her own rough humor. One night, after a long day of labor, Elias sat under the stars. Soraka sat beside him, her giant frame blocking part of the sky. "You are not what I expected, Soraka," he said quietly. She tilted her head. "And what did you expect?" "I thought you would be like the storms, wild, unstoppable, and dangerous, but you are more like the mountains. Strong, steady, and strange but beautiful in your own way." Her eyes softened, and for the first time Elias thought he saw her truly smile. Not the faint curve of lips she sometimes gave, but a real smile, full of warmth. "You are not what I expected either, Elias," she replied. "I thought humans were fragile and weak, but you are something different. You bend, but you do not break. That is rare." The silence that followed was not heavy, but peaceful. They sat together, two unlikely partners, no longer just bound by survival, but by something deeper. Yet peace on the frontier never lasted long. One morning, smoke rose on the horizon. Raiders again, more than before and better armed. Elias's stomach tightened. Alone, he could never have faced them. But he was no longer alone. Soraka rose to her full height, gripping her spear. "They come for us," she said. Elias stood beside her, his heart pounding. He was still afraid, but now he had purpose. "Then we will stand together," he answered. As the enemy drew closer, Elias realized the truth. Their strange partnership had grown into something real. He was no longer just a struggling farmer. With Soraka at his side, he was part of something greater, something worth fighting for. Smoke rose in the distance, black against the pale morning sky. Elias stood at the edge of his farm, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. He had seen raiders before, but never in such numbers. They marched with fire and weapons, their shouts carrying across the land. Beside him, Soraka gripped her long spear. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with fire. "They will test us," she said. "They believe we are weak." Elias swallowed hard. Fear pressed against his chest, but he stood tall. "Then we'll show them we are not." As the raiders approached, Elias's mind raced. They were too many for Soraka alone, and he knew brute strength would not be enough. He thought of the nearby human settlers, poor and scattered like himself. Many feared Soraka's kind, but Elias knew they also feared the raiders. If they could be convinced to unite, there was hope. "I need time," Elias told her quickly. "Hold them at the field's edge. I will return." Soraka looked at him sharply. "Alone? You will be cut down." "I will not," Elias said firmly. "Trust me." For a moment, Soraka's lips pressed together, but then she nodded. "Go, I will hold." Elias ran across the dry land, his lungs burning, until he reached the nearby settlement. Men and women looked up from their meager work, their faces pale with worry. "The raiders are coming," Elias said, breathless. "And they are many. If they reach us one by one, they will take everything. But if we stand together, we can stop them." The settlers muttered among themselves. One man shook his head. "You speak of fighting? Against them? We are not warriors," Elias raised his voice. "Neither am I. But I will fight, and I will not stand alone. Soraka fights with me." Gasps spread through the group. A woman whispered, "The giant widow? She is dangerous." Elias stepped forward, his voice sharp. "She is dangerous, but not to us. She has protected me, and she will protect you. She is strong, but her strength means nothing without us. Together we can end this." The crowd hesitated. Then an older farmer with gray hair spoke. "The boy is right. Alone, we die. Together, we have a chance. One by one, others nodded. Spears and axes were lifted. Hope flickered where fear had been. When Elias returned with the settlers, Soraka was still standing tall in the field. The raiders had stopped at a distance, confused by the sight of a Karaku widow guarding a human farm. Soraka glanced at Elias, her expression unreadable, but her eyes softened when she saw the settlers behind him. "You brought them," she said. "They came because they believe," Elias replied. "Now we fight together." The battle began as the raiders charged. Soraka roared, her spear flashing in the sun, striking with the power of a storm. She stood like a wall, unshaken. But for every foe she cast down, more pressed forward. Elias took command, his voice carrying across the field. "Hold the line. Use the traps." The settlers had followed his instructions, laying ropes and spikes across the ground. Raiders stumbled and settlers struck. Where Soraka's strength broke the enemy, Elias's plans turned their numbers into chaos. For the first time, the raiders faced not scattered victims, but a united front. At the height of the fight, a massive raider leader stepped forward, his armor heavy, his weapon sharp. He laughed at Elias, pointing his blade. "You hide behind your giant, little man. Without her, you are nothing." Elias's heart pounded, but he stepped out from behind Soraka. "Without her, I might fall. But without me, she fights alone. Together, we are more than you will ever be," the raider leader charged. Soraka moved to block him, but Elias raised his hand. "No, I will face him." Soraka's eyes widened. Elias, but he had already picked up a spear. His arm shook, his body weak compared to the enemy's, but his eyes burned with resolve. He dodged the raider's strike, using speed instead of strength. The leader swung wildly, but Elias slipped past him and drove the spear into the ground at his feet, tripping him onto one of the hidden spikes. The leader fell with a cry, and the raiders froze in shock. Their mighty champion was defeated not by the giant widow, but by the small human they had scorned. Panic spread among them. One by one, they turned and fled, leaving the settlers standing victorious. Silence fell over the field, broken only by the ragged breaths of those who had fought. Elias leaned on his spear, his legs trembling, his chest heaving. Soraka approached, her shadow falling over him. For a moment she said nothing. Then she knelt, lowering herself to his height. "You are braver than I believed," she said softly. "You faced death and you did not bend." Elias gave a weak laugh. "I was terrified." "Courage is not the absence of fear," Soraka replied. "It is standing despite it." The settlers gathered, cheering Elias's name and praising Soraka's might. For the first time, the two were seen not as separate, alien and human, but as partners. That evening, as the sun set over the quiet fields, Elias and Soraka sat together by the fire. The settlers had returned to their homes, but their eyes carried new respect. "You saved them," Soraka said. Elias shook his head. "We saved them. You and me, together." She studied him for a long moment. "When I came to you, I spoke of need. I needed a husband, and you needed strength. But now I see more. I see that I need not only strength, but wisdom, hope, and a spirit that does not break. And you needed more than survival. You needed someone to believe in you." Elias looked into her deep eyes, feeling the truth of her words. Maybe that is what we both needed. They sat in silence, watching the stars rise. The night was no longer heavy with loneliness. For Elias, the world no longer felt like a prison of dust and hunger. It felt like the beginning of something greater. The struggling man and the giant widow had become more than allies. They were a symbol of two worlds joining, of strength and spirit woven together. And as the fire crackled, Elias realized that his lonely life had given way to a new path, a future not only of survival, but of legacy. The frontier was still harsh, but with Soraka at his side, he no longer feared it. Together they would build something new, something strong, something lasting. For the first time, Elias smiled without doubt. The universe had tested him, and with her he had found his answer.